Pad Paramahamsa Parikartachaya Asusata Shishimatis Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Om Vishnu Pad Paramahamsa Parikartachaya Asusata Shishimatis Divine Grace Bhakti Siddhanta Srila Prabhupada Ki Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Ki Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Radha Kunda Shama Kunda Giri Govardhana Ki Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Shri Radha Shama Sundar Lalita Vishaka Saki Ki Shri Shri Krishna Balarama Ji Ki Shri Shri Gaur Nitai Ki Nitai Go Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna, good evening. We're sitting with our warm clothes and hats. Only a few weeks ago we were sweating under the fan. I hope you all have a wonderful Kartik month. So much nectar. We're very fortunate to be here in Vrindavan Dham. So today we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita, chapter 18, text 20. Sarvabhuteshu yenaikam bhavamayayam ikshate avibhaktam vibhakteshu tajjnanam vidhi sattvikam sarvabhuteshu yenaikam bhavam avyayam ikshate avibhaktam vibhakteshu tajjnanam vidhi sattvikam. Third, sarvabhuteshu, in all living entities. Yena, by whom? Ekam, one. Bhavam, situation. Avyayam, imperishable. Ikshate, does see. Avibhaktam, undivided. Vibhakteshu, in the numberless divided. Tat, that. Jnanam, knowledge. Vidhi, knows. Sattvikam, in the mode of goodness. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. That knowledge by which one undivided spiritual nature is seen in all existences, undivided in the divided, is knowledge in the mode of goodness. Please repeat. That knowledge by which one undivided spiritual nature is seen in all existences, undivided in the divided, is knowledge in the mode of goodness. Purport. A person who sees one spirit soul in every living being, whether a demigod, human being, animal, bird, beast, aquatic or plant, possesses knowledge in the mode of goodness. In all living entities, one spirit soul is there, although they have different bodies in terms of their previous work. As described in the 7th chapter, the manifestation of the living force in every body is due to the superior nature of the Supreme Lord. Thus, to see that one superior nature, that living force in every body is to see in the mode of goodness. That living energy is imperishable, although the bodies are perishable. The difference is perceived in terms of the body, because there are many forms of material existence in conditional life. Therefore, they appear to be divided. Such impersonal knowledge finally leads to self-realization. Om Agnati Mirandasya Gnanjana Shalakaya Chakshun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Gadamayam Dadati Svaparantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Uta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Paran Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishekan Vitam Cha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gorange Radhe Brindavanishvare Brishabhanu Sude Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Ancha Kalpa Turupyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shiva Sari Gora Bhakta Binda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna. So a beautiful evening in Sri Vrindavan Dham with Prabhupada's mercy. We're so showered by his mercy, and it's always a privilege to have this service. So I beg your patience, because this is a service hopefully for the pleasure of Guru and Gauranga and the Vaishnavas. I have many shortcomings and imperfections, so please excuse me, but we'll try our best. In recent weeks I had the privilege of being able to do some service in the international bookshop that's at the front of the temple. And it's been amazing experience. I mean, absolutely chaotic sometimes, because hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people are coming through all day long. But you have so many wonderful experiences, you know, in preaching to people that are coming and looking for Srila Prabhupada's books. And just recently I met a beautiful young man there, 24-year-old young man. His name was Sanjay, and he came from nearby the village where Lokanath Maharaj comes from. You know, remember some years back Maharaj made that beautiful movie of his village? Anyhow, this young boy, he came from near there, and we ended up having a very wonderful conversation. And his question to me was, how do I make the correct choice? How do I know how to make the correct choice? So I kept meditating on that, and somehow or other, by Krishna's arrangement, I was able to tie in this question with today's topic. I was enlivened in that way. So I felt it's definitely important, especially when we're preaching to people, when we're talking to people about Srimad Bhagavad Gita, that we stay always in touch with the knowledge that is there in the Bhagavad Gita, because sometimes we talk and so many days and weeks and months can go by, and how do we know we're on track, we're online? So even with simple things, it's a good thing to always check back to Bhagavad Gita. So today is text 20, so we know that the chapter is entitled Conclusion, the Perfection of Renunciation. And starting from text 19 all the way through to text 40, Krishna is now speaking to Arjuna about the three modes of material nature. In text 19, the one before tonight's, he spoke that there's three kinds of knowledge, there's three kinds of action, and there's three kinds of performers of action. In the purport to text 19, Prabhupada explains how the mode of goodness is illuminating, the mode of passion is materially binding, and mode of ignorance, of course, puts one in laziness and indolence. And Prabhupada says, however, all of them are binding, not liberating. I just listened to a nice lecture about Mother Yashoda binding Lord Krishna, because that's what we've been doing, listening every day about Mother Yashoda. And one nice point was there that her binding, the rope, binding Krishna with that rope, also signifies that just like we are bound by the ropes of the material modes, however, if we're meditating on the Vaishnavas and the pure devotees and the Krishna's Leelas, then the ropes of material nature cannot bind us. So this is one thing that Mother Yashoda is teaching us with the ropes binding, that actually by meditating on Krishna's pastimes we become free from the bondage of the three modes of material nature. Now, I'm by no means expert in Sanskrit, please excuse me. Luckily, Srila Prabhupada has introduced this system of giving the word-for-word translation, so some things stick a little bit. And sometimes the language can be a little bit technical. So I sought help from Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. He gives a Sarata Varshini Tika, or a commentary on Bhagavad Gita. So to be able to decipher exactly what is being said here, I took help from his translation, which reads as follows. Know that the process of knowledge is sattvic in nature when the individual, indestructible soul with individual form is seen to exist successively in different bodies. So this is the message that is being given to us today. In other words, Krishna is speaking about the importance of sattvic knowledge in regards to our activities in the material world. The purport Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur gives says, this verse speaks of sattvic process of knowing, seeing one soul, or ekam bhavam, with one form, avibhaktam, which is indestructible, avyayam, residing successively in different forms, vibhakteshu, such as human, devata, or animal, for the purpose of enjoying various fruits, which are temporary, through knowledge related to action, is known as sattvic knowledge. Can you understand what is being said? So the knowledge that teaches us that we are individual souls in different material bodies is sattvic knowledge. Of course, these material bodies are given to us because we have a desire to enjoy in this world. So basically that's the gist of this particular sloka. We know right in the beginning of Bhagavad Gita, text 213, I'm sure you all know it, so please say it with me. Dehinosmin yata dehe kaumaram yovanam chara tata dehantara praptiya dhirastatra namuyate. As the embodied soul continually passes in this body from boyhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at death. A self-realized soul is not bewildered by such a change. Why he is not bewildered? Because he has the knowledge, he's self-realized. So we are trying to discuss this evening not only just sattvic knowledge, but the knowledge of self-realization. Because Srila Prabhupada, he likes to use this word, poor fund of knowledge. So obviously, the opposite of sattvic knowledge or knowledge of self-realization is a poor fund of knowledge. So there's also knowledge which is unfavorable, even destructive, like that. So we need to know the difference. Then I felt inspired to read to you because the verse tells how the soul is indestructible. So of course we also know from chapter 2, text 17, Avinashi tutatvidi yena savam idam tatam vinasham avyayasyasya nakashit katum ahati. Know that which pervades the entire body is indestructible. No one is able to destroy the imperishable soul. So the soul is eternal, it's not destructible. Everybody is afraid of death, everybody is afraid of destruction, but the soul is imperishable, indestructible. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains, of course, very nicely how the individual soul is like a particle of an atom. It's so tiny. However, the presence of the soul in the area of the heart region pervades the entire body, and which is known as consciousness. And he quotes from the Mundaka Upanishad, the soul is atomic in size and can be perceived by perfect intelligence. Perfect intelligence, again, brings us to this point of knowledge. We need perfect knowledge. This atomic soul is floating in the 5 kinds of air, prana, apana, vyana, samana, and udana. Is situated within the heart and spreads its influence all over the body of the embodied living entities. When the soul is purified from the contamination of the 5 kinds of material air, its spiritual influence is exhibited. So again, it's talking about purification of some kind of contamination because of ignorance. So it's all related to knowledge. I wanted to also thank you for your patience. There is going to be a flow, a succession to what I'm getting at. In Bhagavad Gita, no, I just got the wrong one. Wait, then? Yeah, no, I said that. So then in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7, chapter 2, text 12, in the purport, because Krishna explains here to Arjuna how he always existed and how Arjuna will always exist as well. And in the future, all of us will exist. This knowledge is very, very important, especially for new coming people. It's very liberating to get this kind of knowledge. So here, Srila Prabhupada in the purport, of course, quotes the very famous verse from the Katha Upanishad, Nityo Nityanam Chetanas Chetananam Eku Bahunam Yo Vidadati Kaman. I'll just say this much, and here, of course, the Vedic truth is given here to Arjuna to understand that not only are we indestructible and imperishable, but we're individual. This word individual came up, how there's an individual soul in each form going successively through different births. Because at the last sentence of that purport that we're discussing today, Srila Prabhupada mentions the word impersonalism. And I don't go there, but of course Mayavad philosophy is that ultimately all souls merge and they become one, and in the ultimate issue we're all God, and there's Narayan, and we just see Narayan in everybody and like that. It's very unpalatable philosophy, Mayavad philosophy. Srila Prabhupada explains all the different aspects of Mayavad philosophy very nicely, especially in Chaitanya Charitamrita. It gets a little bit too technical for me, and I won't go in that direction tonight. But obviously, the antidote of true knowledge has to be given. It's just like I just heard recently explained, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he came to establish bhakti. And then Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj, his son, illustrious son, came to teach everything that is not bhakti. So in this knowledge of Vaishnava philosophy, we have to know what it is and what it isn't. What Vaishnava philosophy is and what it isn't. So again, What is this knowledge then? What is true knowledge? Again, I'm taking help from Srila Prabhupada's purport. In chapter 7, text 1, in the purport, because I'll come back to that young man that I was speaking to, how I tried to explain to him how to make the correct choices. So one thing I tried to immediately point out to him, you first need to understand your destination. What is your destination? What is your goal? So here in Bhagavad Gita, Srila Prabhupada explains in so many nice ways that by concentrating one's mind upon Krishna, making Krishna the ultimate goal, one is able to know the absolute truth completely. This is really important. But not otherwise. So if you want to know the truth, if you want to know the absolute knowledge, the absolute truth, then our nose is pointed straight to the important issue, namely concentrate your mind on Krishna, because there's no other way to know absolute knowledge or Krishna. Prabhupada then further explains, full and scientific knowledge is Krishna. Full and scientific knowledge is Krishna. And everything is revealed. This is a very, very important word, is revealed to the person in Krishna consciousness. Everything, that means material and spiritual, everything that there is revealed to the person in Krishna consciousness. In complete Krishna consciousness, one knows that Krishna is ultimate knowledge beyond any doubt. Further along, Prabhupada encourages, by practice of Krishna consciousness yoga, one can know everything in full, namely the absolute truth, the living entities, the material nature. Material nature, so many people are very confused even about material life. Nowadays, our traveling sannyasi gurus, they're spending more time sorting out social and psychological problems of people than what they're even able to just speak directly about the Lord, about the Vaishnava philosophy. So much confusion is there even on the material platform. So by practice of Krishna consciousness yoga, one can know everything in full, namely the absolute truth, the living entities, the material nature, and their manifestations with paraphernalia. Again, in chapter 7, text 3 in the purport, only the pure devotee can know something of the inconceivable transcendental qualities in Krishna, in the cause of all causes, in his omnipotence and opulence, and in his wealth, fame, strength, beauty, knowledge, and renunciation, because Krishna is benevolently inclined to his devotee. So again, we are being told that if you want knowledge, if you want to learn how to make correct choices, you have to take shelter of Krishna, because he benevolently will reveal everything that you need to know, because he's inclined to his devotee. So now, and then I come to what I actually wanted to say. I love reading chapter 12 of Bhagavad Gita, because in chapter 12 of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna teaches us how to become dear to him. He tells in so many verses, 8 verses I think, he tells, if you really want to endear yourself to me, I'll give you the clue. I'll give you the pointers. We don't have to speculate, we don't have to guess. It's very clearly spelled out how to become dear to Krishna. So in chapter 12, text 20, Srila Prabhupada in the purport explains, in the impersonal conception of the absolute truth, one works without fruitive result, meditates and cultivates knowledge to understand spirit and matter. So somebody that at least is making an effort to understand material knowledge, and spiritual knowledge, even if he's impersonal, that means he doesn't understand the supreme truth as a personality and hasn't yet understood the relationship. That's all right, because if he meditates and cultivates knowledge to understand spirit and matter, then, Prabhupada says, this is necessary as long as one is not in the association of pure devotee. So we do these things of meditation, cultivating knowledge, seeking, searching, and this is good, it's important, but it must bring us to this point of meeting a pure devotee. Why? Fortunately, if one develops directly a desire to engage in Krishna consciousness in pure devotional service, he does not need to undergo step-by-step improvements in spiritual realization, because the pure devotee will take you straight to the top, like that. Devotional service, as described in the middle 6 chapters of Bhagavad Gita, is more congenial. One need not bother about materials. I love this sentence. One need not bother about materials to keep body and soul together, because by the grace of the Lord, everything is carried out automatically. I wished I would have thought of this sentence when I was speaking to this young man, because here's a 24-year-old young man. He's at the door of his life. He feels responsible. He wants to be responsible. He wants to have a successful life. He needs to make choices, but he doesn't know how to make choices for various reasons. Because in the material world, the material knowledge that's been educated to us, especially a young man like that, he told me he's, of course, an engineer, because his parents and maybe even grandparents, and definitely the school system, would have educated him. You should just get a really good education, make a lot of money, then your life will be successful. And we know that trap, we know that vortex, you see. So he's convinced of that, and he wants to be sincere. He's got good energy, good heart. But he doesn't understand, and this takes a big leap of faith. And that faith only comes in the association of devotees, that one need not bother about materials to keep body and soul together, because by the grace of the Lord, everything is carried out automatically. To really understand that if I just engage in devotional service, whatever my material needs are, Krishna will take care. And this is the knowledge that we need to focus. In chapter 14, text 27, again in Srila Prabhupada's purport, this was a very good exercise for me. Please, thank you for your patience, because it's a good thing to really go through all the different purports and refresh your own memory of what we're teaching. Otherwise, when you come in contact and somebody is inquiring, how do you know you're on course, you see? So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada says, therefore, in spite of being raised to the Brahman platform, there's the chance of falling down if one is not engaged in the devotional service of the Lord. This is in relationship, I'm reading now, to impersonalism. You might aspire for liberation, the Brahman platform, but there's a chance of again falling down, Prabhupada warns, if you don't engage in devotional service. In the Vedic language, it is also said, raso vai sa, or rasam yevayam labdvanandi bhavati. When one understands the personality of God, the reservoir of pleasure, Krishna, he actually becomes transcendentally blissful. So this is taking knowledge now again, a further step up. Not that we just want knowledge of how to sort out material life. That's important, and that must be there. And we want knowledge to, take us, at least to make us curious and inquisitive about spiritual life. Then we need to learn how to come from the impersonal to the personal. Because why? Because when we learn how to be the devotee of Krishna, there's such rasa, there's such taste, that we get to experience eternal bliss, happiness, real happiness, this sevananda, this ananda, this bliss that comes from engaging in the Lord's devotional service. First when we come, there's kleshagni, the diminution of material suffering, the relief of material suffering. And along with that comes subhada, all auspiciousness. So when we initially come to Krishna consciousness, there's that happiness of relief of material suffering. But eventually, by engaging in the devotional service of the Lord, we come to moksha laghutakrit and sudurlabha. Rupa Goswami explains in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, where we deride impersonal liberation because we understand there's something much higher and much better. And then we come to Sangrananda Visheshatma, Krishna Akashani Cha. So we learn that if I engage in devotional service, I develop love for Krishna because he loves me, and there's an exchange of rasa. And it's eternal, because I'm eternal, because I'm a part of Krishna. He's Satchidananda, I'm Satchidananda, but minute, like that. So when one understands the personality of God, the reservoir of pleasure, Krishna, he actually becomes transcendentally blissful. So again, I try to tell this young man, you need to know how to set your GPS. If you're living wherever he's living, I can't remember the name of that village, and you want to make a journey to Delhi, you might not be exactly sure of the geography or all the road maps and like that, but you know your destination is Delhi, so you can have a GPS in your car, right? And maybe sometimes, it will say, in 500 meters, take a right, isn't it? But sometimes we're busy talking with our partner or whatever, we might miss the turn. Then it will say, in 200 meters, take a left and make a U-turn, isn't it? So I said to him, don't worry so much for making choices. Don't have any fear of making choices because you have a free will, you are an independent individual being, but set your GPS to the right course. Then even if apparently you might have missed a choice or made the wrong choice, actually there's no such wrong thing as wrong choice anymore, because the GPS is the super soul in your heart. He will tell you, oh, you missed your turn. Take a U-turn and do like that. Because Krishna will always help you. He's situated in your heart, and he will definitely help you and guide you to reach your destination. The thing is to set the GPS to the right destination. Or in other language they say, make sure your ladder is leaning up against the right wall. Because you can work really hard and climb and climb and climb and really make such an effort and be so sincere and devoted and hardworking and everything. But then you get to the top and you look over the wall, oops, that's not really where I wanted to go. You see? So it's important to be sure to lean your ladder against the right wall. So anyhow, Prabhupada says so many wonderful things. Sometimes it's hard to put your own words because Prabhupada says it everything so perfectly. But what I wanted to say is the Supreme Lord is, Prabhupada points out here, the Supreme Lord is full in 6 opulences, right? The servant of the king enjoys an almost equal level with the king. And so, eternal happiness, imperishable happiness, eternal life accompany devotional service. Therefore, realization of Brahman or eternity or imperishability is included in devotional service. You don't have to try for them separately. This is already possessed by a person who is engaged in devotional service. So clearly we need to seek out that wall that says on the top, PDS. Not Pure Devotee Syndrome, but Pure Devotional Service. You see? That needs to be our wall. So I found Prabhupada is pointing out here to Krishna's six opulences. And for us as devotees, of course, we always connect everything back to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. I mean, here in Vrindavan, we've been so fortunate to be these Kartik months here in Vrindavan Dham. Despite the traumatizing chaos out there, just immediately out the front of the temple, somehow or other we're in this fortunate environment of getting so much mercy. And why we're getting this mercy is because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wants to give it to us. And Srila Prabhupada was the emissary of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mercy, like that. So there's this beautiful verse that Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya speaks. Because after he becomes realized, he comes to knowledge. He was an impersonalist, you know. And after he comes to the right knowledge, his GPS was adjusted, you see, then he speaks the Sarvabhauma Satakam, right? These beautiful verses of glorification in Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And it's recorded in Chaitanya Charitamrita in Madhya Lila 21, text 110. 2 verses are given there. Beautiful verses. Am I saying the right thing? No, I'm not saying the right thing. Sorry. In a moment I will tell you that verse about Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. Here's a different verse given by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Please excuse me. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, is full in all 6 opulences. We just heard that from Prabhupada's purport. Including his attractive beauty. This is an extra. We hear about Krishna's 6 opulences, and now we are learning about the sweetness of his beauty, which engages him in conjugal love with the gopis. We're in Vrindavan, so we're hearing these kind of topics already this whole last month, no? Such sweetness is the quintessence of his qualities. Sukadev Goswami, the son of Vyasadeva, has described these pastimes of Krishna throughout Srimad Bhagavatam. Hearing the description, the devotees become mad with love of God. These are Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's words. And Prabhupada explains that in the introduction to Nectar of Instruction, to Nectar of Devotion. He tells the mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is give you this highest love of God as available here in Braj, in Vrindavan, and make you mad with love of God. So see, the GPS is becoming more and more focused, more and more refined of what is our destination. So we've talked a little bit how we need to encourage the young ones to distinguish between material knowledge and spiritual knowledge, to give them a sound basis. If you're not situated materially, then how can, like, my message to this young man and so many other young people are, please take care of your physical health. Your body needs to be in good health. That means nutritious, healthy food. Of course, Krishna Prasadam. It means clean air, fresh water, exercising. This is just normal part of maintaining the physical body. Because if your body is maintained nicely, you will have mental clarity. Then you will know what kind of questions to ask, how to ask them, where to ask them, how to find the answers. That takes mental clarity. For that, we need to associate ourselves with the right kind of information. There is poor fund of knowledge. There's bad information, isn't it? There's very confusing education. There is deliberate, demonic, misleading education. So we need to have clarity of mind to make the correct choices. And then, if we have a clear mind and we're keeping in the right association with the right information, we can come to spiritual resolve. I've had young people under my care sometimes. I particularly remember this one young man. He was suffering with anorexia. That was quite common. And I tried to encourage him, please take this prasadam. And he cried because he couldn't take the prasadam. I didn't know it at the time, but I was giving him some halva. And he was very hesitant. I was thinking he's shy. But then he started crying. This is an 18-year-old young man. He started crying. He said, Anuradha, I'm so confused. I don't know what to eat. There's so much information, about health. Gluten-free, vegan, this, that. So much information, no? Protein, B12, you need to eat meat, right? All this information is there, and young people are very confused. So we need to help them to come to the correct understanding, how to take care of their body, how to achieve mental clarity, and then they can make a spiritual resolve. Like that. I've had actually a few devotees under my care with this bulimia and anorexia and like that, and they're very troubled people because they're just confused. So I told them, choose food that is suitable for your body, that makes you feel healthy and refreshed and light and happy, offer to Krishna and eat nicely. So as devotees, it's also our responsibility to make sure we cook healthy. Especially this mass distribution of prasadam, we have to be careful, because we might say, oh, it's prasadam, but how much is it really conducive for health? Anyhow, so another point I quickly wanted to make in accumulating this knowledge, we have to, Bhagavatam of course warns, not just to accumulate knowledge for the sake of gyan, saeva gokara. If you're just accumulating knowledge for the sake of filling your brain with so much information, but that knowledge is not bringing you to devotional service, then it actually is no better than keeping a cow that doesn't give milk, or keeping an ass, a donkey, a bird, a beast of burden. This is Bhagavatam. It says, if through meticulous study one becomes expert in reading Vedic literature, but makes no endeavor to fix one's mind, again this fix one's mind, on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then one's endeavor is certainly like that of a man who works very hard to take care of a cow that gives no milk. In other words, the fruit of one's laborious study of Vedic knowledge will simply be the labor itself. There will be no other tangible result. This is Srimad Bhagavatam 11:18. There's a beautiful book written by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. It's called Chaitanya Shikshamrita. It's a bit technical, very detailed. Bhaktivinoda Thakur is expert. He covers every little nick and corner and everything of knowledge that you need to know about everything. Very clearly, very systematically. If you have the brain power, it's really rewarding to study his books, because he will definitely systematically lead you to the path of pure devotional service. But he analyzes everything very carefully. Now, he says in the conclusion of this book, Chaitanya Shikshamrita, he explains that the subject under deliberation is the life of the spirit soul. What is life? And what is the goal of life? That's what we have been discussing, right? The knowledge. What is the goal of life? So he says life is of two types: pure life and conditioned life. Pure life exists in the pure spiritual world, where life is eternal, pure, full of bliss, and devoid of deficiency, lamentation, fear, and death. That's the spiritual world. If you want to explain to somebody what is the nature of the spiritual world, here's the clear definition given. There's no deficiency. It's eternal. It's pure, full of bliss. We all want these. These are very, very attractive qualities. You don't find them here in the material world. There's no lamentation, there's no fear, and no death. Or as my revered spiritual master, Sri Srimad Gaur Govinda Swami, so often would tell us, if you just take shelter of the lotus feet of Lord Govinda, Shyam Sundar, then it is a place where there is no lamentation, no fear, and no death. You have to think about that. You have to meditate on that. How is it if I fix my mind on Krishna's lotus feet, I will be free from lamentation, fear, and death even? How is that? It's a very deep and important meditation, especially again in these modern times. You know, there's so much information floating around in the world in the moment. We're all very aware, creating more and more and more this fear in people. Already there's fear. Fear in that quality is not necessarily a bad thing, because we all need self-preservation. We need to preserve our body. So there's fear of danger. However, we need the correct knowledge that we're not this body, that we're a spirit soul, we have an eternal life. Then there's no fear. There's no need of fear. This fear-mongering that's going on is misleading people tremendously. So again and again, Srila Prabhupada explains that actually devotional service is the only way to know Krishna. We've just had this beautiful month of Kartik. It's nearly finished. It's always sad when it comes towards the end, isn't it? You kind of wish, we just should do it 12 months a year. It's so exhilarating and enlivening and inspiring, and all the devotees are making an extra effort, so the atmosphere is transcendentally surcharged. So we're offering a lamp every day to Radha Shyam Sundar, Krishna Balaram Gaur Nitai. So we want this lamp to lighten our heart so that we will become free from ignorance. We won't be with poor fund of knowledge. We will be in true knowledge. Tesham eva nukampatam aham agyana jam tamaha nasha yam yatma bhavasto jnana dipena bhasvataha. Out of compassion for them, this is Krishna, out of compassion, he has such compassion. He says in the 10th chapter, text 11, I, dwelling in their hearts, destroy with a shining lamp of knowledge the darkness born of ignorance. It's beautiful, no? We're so fortunate. So we're offering this lamp to Krishna, begging him, please, light the lamp in our heart, so there will be bright, shining light, and we will be self-realized, not only self-realized, but engaged in pure devotional service, PDS. Like that. And the purport is absolutely amazing, so encouraging, because in the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains about knowledge, how there are many learned scholars, and they put their philosophy of devotion. And then he says, and I love this sentence, he says, but even if a devotee does not take advantage of their literatures, if a devotee doesn't take advantage of these literatures for some reason, whatever, maybe too busy or illiterate maybe even, or blind or whatever, I don't know, for whatever reason, or of his spiritual master, if he is sincere in his devotional service, he is helped by Krishna himself within his heart. Isn't that beautiful? Isn't it beautiful? Now we're talking about the two fingers, right? The devotee's sincerity and Krishna's allowing to be bound. So as long as we're sincere, that means we're trying our best. Krishna will help from within the heart. So the sincere devotee engaged in Krishna consciousness cannot be without knowledge. So it's not about becoming a great jnani, or a great philosopher, or a great scholar. It's about being sincere in your service to Krishna, and Krishna will light your heart with all the knowledge. So in conclusion, I quote this verse from Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, quoted in Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila 6, text 254. Let me take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Sri Krishna, who has descended in the form of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to teach us real knowledge. His devotional service and detachment from whatever does not foster Krishna consciousness. It's brilliant, no? He has descended because he is an ocean of transcendental mercy. So we just need a little drop from that ocean, please, a little drop of mercy on my head. Let me surrender unto his lotus feet. It's nice, huh? I'll read it again. Let me take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, who has descended in the form of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to teach us real knowledge, his devotional service, and detachment from wherever, that means all that kind of knowledge that will deter us from Krishna, that will take us away from bhakti. Whatever does not foster Krishna consciousness, he has descended because he's an ocean of transcendental mercy. Let me surrender unto his lotus feet. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki jai, Kartik Mans ki jai. If there are any questions or some comments, yes, Prabhu.
Just one, Mataji. You mentioned early on in your class that there are 5 kinds of air inside the body.
Oh my gosh, I was hoping nobody would ask me that. That's a bit too technical for me.
Question is not technical.
Okay, yeah. Yeah.
It was mentioned that until the soul is liberated from or separated from these 5 airs, one is not able to perform pure devotion. So there's something to that effect.
Yeah.
But does it mean that until the soul leaves the body, one can't? Could you clarify, please?
Yes, I know your question because I was prepared in my mind when I was reading that sentence. I was wondering, is somebody going to ask me this? And I read further. If you go back to the purport, Prabhupada clarifies it. You know, he's brilliant. He makes everything just digestible for us, and he explains the easiest understanding is conditioned life. Being affected by these 5 kinds of airs means you're in conditioned life. So it doesn't mean you have to leave the body. No, you just have to come to spiritual life. I know that much because I read the purport a little bit more carefully because I was wondering if that question would come. Anybody else has a...
Can you repeat that again, that if we are affected by the 5 kinds of air, that means we are...
In conditioned life.
Conditioned life.
Yeah. Please, you go back to the purport and study it more in depth and research and get more knowledge on it.
Also, just the last line of today's purport, that impersonal knowledge actually leads to devotional service.
Yes, oh yes, thank you. Brilliant question.
Big statement.
Yeah. Thank you so much, because I meditated on that sentence and I know how to explain it because I've experienced it. When I was a young woman, I was only 19 years old. I know exactly what Prabhupada is saying. Exactly, it sounds really pompous, doesn't it? But I understand from my experience. When I was 19 years old, I didn't know about Krishna consciousness. I didn't know about Krishna Bhagavad Gita or anything. I was just a young woman trying to find the truth. So at that time, I was in Australia, and I was with a group of friends, and we were very philosophically inclined. Okay, sometimes people say hippies, but I don't actually so much like that word hippie. We were young people searching for the truth. We didn't watch television, we didn't take drugs, and we used to love sitting around the kitchen table till the early morning hours discussing all different philosophical concepts. And through that, back in my generation, we were very avid readers. We loved books. We didn't have computers and all of that, which I'm really grateful to. So we shared, different philosophical books, and they make their rounds, and then we'd sit together and discuss them. So somehow or other we understood, and I wanted to make that point because I tried to make that point to that young man in the bookshop, Sanjay. I said, you've been misinformed and told that money will solve all your problems. That is the root of ignorance. And we understood this. And now this is going back 45 years. We were young. The young people today, every young generation thinks they're the smart ones, they know better than the oldies. But we also were pretty smart. We had it figured that actually looking at the situation and the way the world is developing, we knew that at that time, this is 1975 like that, we knew that actually the problem is money. And Prabhupada says that. He clearly explains that the whole world is controlled and owned by the Rockefellers and the Rothschild families, right? He says that. Of course, these names and these personalities in this modern day and age, they've become so clever, they're hiding behind big corporations, and you don't see their names out front. So you can't get at them, you see? So anyhow, we understood if we don't bite into this money problem, we'll be free from the control of these powers that be, you see? So we pooled our money, we researched, we put all our resources together. We did different odd jobs, which was very easy in those days. You could just take a job in a factory for a few weeks or in a fruit picking farm or something. And then we just pooled our money together and we bought a property in the bush, how they say in Australia. It was right next to a beautiful national park. It was at the end of the road, off-grid, no electricity, no running water. And this was before, we were not Hare Krishna devotees, but we knew that this is the only way. I had a cow, I had a calf, I was milking the cow, we had a field, we had garden, and like that. And it was a perfect sattvic lifestyle, and we had our library. Luckily, I was with friends. We're always accumulating books, you see. So we're studying all these books. St. Francis of Assisi and Hermann Hesse and all Autobiography of a Yogi. I mean, everybody knows these kind of books and all the philosophies. And one day, I came into the house because I could spend all day reading and all night. And I looked at our library, and this is what happened. I didn't know about Super Soul, but somehow or other I knew the voice in the heart. I didn't know how and what that all happens, but a voice very loud and very distinctly said to me, "You can read all the books in all of the libraries and still not find the truth. Because the authors of all these books are really just ordinary people like you." That realization, that voice came from within me, very clear. And it startled me. And I realized. And then I was thinking, so then? And then the answer came. What you need is to find a teacher that knows the truth and can teach you and take you there immediately. This is what is meant in that last sentence. From impersonal, I had no concept, very vague concept of God, because I come from the Christian background, so at least we see God as a father, as a person, right? But it's very, very impersonal, very vague. So because of the spiritual inquiry, because Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he says, there's two kinds of, sorry, I didn't finish that actually, there's two kinds of conditioned life. He says there is the Bahya Mukha, the grossly materialist, right? There's those who just determined to enjoy. They're actually going in the opposite direction. You see, they're determined to enjoy material life. Then there's the Antamukha, or those that are inclined to spiritual life. They have some inquisitiveness. So we were a bunch of people. We were inquisitive. We were inclined towards spiritual knowledge. And because of that, when the moment was right, the realization came, actually, you can't do this on your own. You need to get in the right kind of education system. And that realization, and at that time it was a big thing, the realization came to me, I have to go to India. Somehow or other I understood that India is the mother of religion, and if I want the truth, I have to come here. That was a major endeavor in those days. By the time I reached India, I was a 21-year-old young woman. India is not a safe place for a 21-year-old young woman to be traveling on trains and buses. But anyhow, I trusted that voice. Somehow or other, I trusted this voice. Okay, you've told me this is what I need. So I came to India to seek the teacher. I didn't even know the word guru, you see. And then by Krishna's grace, along the way, I was shown, you need to find Vrindavan. You need to find Bhagavad Gita. This was all shown to me. That is what Prabhupada means. By the impersonal process, you can come to devotional service. It is helpful, this meditation and this studying and like that. That's how I understood it.
That was which year?
What was one?
When you were 21 and you came here?
That was in 1979. And I came here to Vrindavan in June, first week of June, and it was really, really hot. And I was absolutely jubilant and over the moon because I understood the minute I set foot here in this temple, I already had the Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita had come to me. I couldn't understand any of it. I thought it was a really beautiful book. And all I knew was looking on the back and seeing the picture of Prabhupada, because we knew from our previous study group that we did as friends, you always check out the author first before you put your faith in the book. So all I remember, I bought this Bhagavad Gita and I saw the picture of Srila Prabhupada and I thought, oh, he looks really nice. He looks really respectable. He looks somebody I can trust. So I knew it was going to be a good book. But then I tried to read it and it was beautiful. I loved the poetry of it and, you know, the beauty of the language, but I couldn't understand it. That only happened once I came to the devotees, of course, and at that time in 1979, the temple was only filled with so many Prabhupada disciples. And everybody at every step would say, well, actually, you know, Prabhupada said. So I was fed and raised on a lot of Prabhupada saids. But I remember Gopala, she was the wife of the temple president at that time, which was Gunanava. And she was from Australia. So she took me a little bit under her wing. And she took me to the Yamuna, which was a lot closer and beautiful sandy banks. You could walk. We walked to the Yamuna. And the water was clear and I could see the little turtles. I don't mean to be nostalgic, but that's what it was. And on the way back, and she told me so many things about the Yamuna and Krishna and this and that. And then as we walked back, and I can never forget this, she said to me, Bhaktin, blah, blah, you have to understand, you are not this body. She looked at me and with a smiling face, I'll always remember her face. And if I ever meet her again, I don't know. I have to eternally thank her because she just looked at me and said, please just understand, you're not this body. And I felt such an exhilaration, such a relief. But you see, that's only a part of the knowledge. And that carries you so far. Then the next thing, of course, has to be, well, what am I then? What am I to do? So when I came in contact with Srila Prabhupada's mission, I was thinking, this is perfect. Because it solves all your material problems. It gives you a plan, a future to work towards you. It gives you a beautiful fashion, food, friendship, lifestyle, engagement, plenty of engagement. There's no question of boredom or being depressed, not knowing who you are and what you're doing and where you're going, right? So anyway, it was a special time, and I'm eternally grateful.
The reason the last line struck me
Yes.
was because generally, by and large, Prabhupada is always all guns blazing with the impersonalists and impersonalism. It's probably the second time in my life in reading Prabhupada's transcendental works that I've come across a statement right in the purport where Prabhupada is going so easy on impersonal knowledge and says finally leads to self-realization. And so that kind of changes my perspective towards those who are practicing impersonalism, because otherwise, generally the mood is of belligerence and,
I understand what you're saying. However, you have to understand the difference between impersonalism and Mayavadism. See, impersonalism is just ignorance. You don't understand the personality, and we all come from an impersonal background, actually. You see? However, the danger is in Mayavad philosophy, because they are the greatest offenders, because they're thinking to become God. Whereas an impersonalist just doesn't know God. So there's a chance. So that is what Prabhupada is trying to say. Of course, we don't follow impersonal philosophy, of course not. However, he's pointing out there is a good chance. Mayavad philosophy is horrible. Okay? Yeah.
Chaitanya Charitamrita 264 verse Bhakti Leela.
Oh, no, Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Leela 6, text 254. Yeah.
Bhakti Leela 6.
Yes, Madhya Leela. Thank you, dear devotees. Thank you for being here this evening. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Have a wonderful last few days of the Kartik months in Vrindavan Dham. Hare Krishna.